Okay, folks, we're back and we're going to continue with section 8. Bomb it again. You guys can call me also Mo. It's actually fine. So, look, what I'm going to be doing is removing Active Directory. I want to show you what's going to happen when I demote a domain controller. Now, remember, we actually have two domains. We have one tree. The tree has the first domain, which is the parent, as udemy.local, and the second domain, which is a child domain, it's support.udemy.local. So I have one forest, one tree, and two domains. What's going to happen when I demote? Why am I doing this? I want to explain more on what is a standalone server versus a member server versus a domain controller, right? That's what I'm trying to lead to. So watch this. I'm going to go to my third server, which is my child domain. I only have one domain controller hosted here. So watch this. So let me go ahead and continue. So if I go to manage, look, at the moment, it's actually a domain controller. All right. So if I click on this, it tells me it's a DC. See support.udemy.local. And if I go to tools, let me just show you something. And I open this time domains and trusts. There's an automatic trust between the parent and the child. Look, I see the parent and I see the child. All right. So if I right click on the parent and I choose properties, I go to the trust tab, it shows me the child. Mhm. And if I go to the child and I choose properties and I go to the trust, it shows me the parent, right? Trust, which means they automatically trust each other. It's automatically established. I did not have to establish that trust, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to manage, remove roles and features. Remember, there's only one DC in this domain, and I can show you that in here, users and computers. So if I go to domain controllers, there's only one, right? It doesn't have a replica. So what I'm going to do is next and remove the check mark from Active Directory domain services, right? Look what's going to tell me. You cannot remove the role because it's hosting Active Directory. So the first thing that I have to do is demote the domain controller. So I'm going to click on that. See, I don't do force removal. I like to cover everything with you folks. If I do force removal, it's like suicide. It's like the parents didn't even know that the child is actually gone. So I want to make sure they sync with each other. But I have to say it's the last domain controller in the domain. If I try to go with these credentials, it's not going to work because I need to have enterprise admin rights to remove a new domain. So I'm going to click on change and put Udemy, right, slash administrator, and then the password. And go next. Proceed with removal, right? Host the following. So I'm going to go next and remove DNS. I could say remove everything. So DNS is actually gone. And this is also Udemy slash administrator. I need to have enterprise admin rights. And let me put the actual password and go next. Now, look, it's telling me about a new password. Guess what? My second domain, which is the child domain, does not have a replica. So this is the last domain controller in the domain. When I demote, in other words, removing Active Directory from it, it will become a standalone server, like a worker. It's like a fresh installation. So this is the password for the local machine right now. Okay, just to let you know. So I'm going to go next and demote. And let's give it a moment. It should not take long. After it's done, it's going to proceed with an actual restart. And after that, I could remove the actual role that I was referring to, which is Active Directory domain services, right? That's what's going to happen. So stopping services, it's not going to take not even 10 seconds. And it should be actually being removed. So let's see, it should restart in a few moments. All right. And after the restart, this is actually a standalone server. It's not a member server, which means it's not part of the domain since it's the last domain controller in the domain, right? It's the last domain controller in the domain itself. So after this, it will just go ahead and give it an actual restart. And my local password is the same one. I just left it actually the same. So this domain is gone. So my forest has only what one tree, and my tree only has one domain. Right. So there you go. Finished. Everything looks good. It's going to restart. I could just click close. It will restart on its own, and this will not take long. And I could prove to you that this server is a standalone server. That means it's a work group, which means it's a peer-to-peer network. right? That's what it means. It's a peer-to-peer network. So let's give this a moment. And after this, I could actually remove the role, which is called Active Directory Domain Services. So let's give this a moment. It should not take long, guys. I don't want to pause the video because look, it's automatically up there. See, it doesn't take long when it's a standalone. Let me just log on. See, I don't see any domains right now. All right. And let me just log on. So remember, when you actually click on tools in Server Manager, and if you see Active Directory, it doesn't mean that it's an actual domain controller, right? It doesn't mean it's a domain controller. Let's remember that. All right. So let's wait for Server Manager to populate, and you'll see it's a standalone server, which means it's a work group. I only can manage it locally from the machine itself, right? That's what it means. So let me go to local server. And look what it says, workgroup. It's a peer-to-peer network. So now I could go to tools. If I open Active Directory, I cannot do anything. It's going to give me an error message. It's just the RSAT is actually installed, right? So I need to go to manage, remove roles and features, and go next, and remove the check mark from Active Directory domain services, right? Because it's no longer needed here. And then also I want to remove the check mark from DNS. So these are the steps to demote or remove Active Directory from an actual domain that doesn't have replicas. And I'm going to put a check mark to restart when it's done and click on remove. All right. This should not take long. And after this is done, it's going to restart. Then this server is just a standalone server. It's a work group. It's like, I just installed it fresh from scratch, right? So we actually did what we needed to do with this actual server. So after the role is removed, it's going to restart on its own because I did put a check mark in the box to request a reboot when it's actually done. Watch this. Let's take a look and see what's going to happen on the behavior of this server. After the restart, it should not take long, all right? This will not actually take long at all. Let's keep that in mind because it's not really hosting anything right now, right? It's not hosting any type of service. It just has the suffix. Look what it says. Windows 2019-3.support.udemy.local. I just have to change the suffix. It doesn't really mean anything. This is just a fully qualified domain name, as you see, right? It's a fully qualified domain name. There you go. Restarting. Looks good, right? So it's removing some features, removing some roles, and it's a standalone server, and this looks perfect to us. That's how it should be. So this is my third server. It's a standalone server. What I'm going to do when I reach the logon screen, I'm just going to suspend this virtual machine. And we're actually done with this lecture. So we're going to continue with the next lecture. And this time, we're going to be demoting an actual replica, which is server two. And I'm going to discuss what's going to happen for each one of them, right? But I want to show you over here, at least when I log in, it's going to actually continue removing the role itself. So when you actually remove a role and it tells you to restart, it's going to continue to remove the role once you log on. So you have to log on, of course. And after you log on, it will actually continue to remove the role itself. So let's give this a few more seconds and see where it goes from here. All right, this looks good. And let me log on. All right, there we go. Oh, looks like I put the wrong password. And let me just go. There you go. All right. And watch this. And it should continue removing the role on its own. So it should populate in a few seconds. Because right now, when I go to tools, right, watch this. Let me just show you. See, it's removing. So I'm not going to see Active Directory or any of that. Users and computers or any of that is actually gone. Right? There you go. Almost done. Let's give it a few more seconds and it should be finishing up. All right. I always like dot local. Like internally, guys, inside an organization, always do dot local, right? That's what you want to do. You want to always make sure it's dot local. Not .com, not .edu, not .org. So nobody can reach you from outside. It's good for security when I make it as not local. There you go. That's fine. I'm good. So I'm going to suspend this. Okay. And I'm just going to stick with server one and server two. Server three should be actually gone. So we're going to be removing Active Directory from the second server when we come back to our next lecture. Still part of section 8. So, folks, we'll see you guys in a moment. All right, guys, later then. Bye. All right, folks, we're back. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with our next lecture, part of the same section. So right now, what I'm about to do is to remove Active Directory. You could say demote the domain controller from server 2. Server 2 is a replica. Let's take a look and see what's going on here. Let me go to server 2 and log on to server 2. So here we go. Right, so if I do the netdom query FSMO, I can see that server 2 is holding the FSMO roles. And if I go to server 1 and log on, I can see that they're actually pointing to server 2. All right. So watch this. Let me do a netdom query FSMO. And I can see they're pointing to server 2. So if I demote server 2, remember my domain, which is the parent domain, has two DCs, server 1 and server 2. Server 2 is holding the FSMA roles. If I demote server 2, the FSMA roles automatically will get transferred to server 1. But what's going to happen to server 2? It's not going to be a standalone server. It will become a member server, which means it's just joined to the domain. So let me go to server 2. Watch this. And my next step is to manage, remove roles and features, and go next, and remove the check mark from Active Directory domain services and go. And it's going to fail. You know what I also need to do? I'm not going to have DNS on this server anymore. So what? Look, see, it's failing. So I could do demote this domain controller, right? That's what I'm going to be doing. But look what I'm going to do here. I need to make a minor change over here. So when I go to my network settings, I know that I have two DNS servers. So what I need to do is make sure the DNS which is on this server is actually gone. I cannot use 128. 128 is the first one. I cannot use 129 anymore. 129 is this server. And if I demote DC, DNS is also gone. So just to be on the clear. So I would go back here and say, it's when do I do a force removal? If everything crashes and I want to start from scratch, I hope it never happens to anybody. That's when you do a force removal. So of course I'm not. I'm going to be notifying my DC1, which is server one. Next, proceed with removal. Next, and put a password. This is going to be the local password, but even though it's going to be part of the domain, because if it's a member server, I could log into the domain or to the local machine. Next, and demote. Watch this. Keep watching. This is actually interesting to actually watch and see what happens over here. Let's give it a moment and see how this works for us. So it should transfer the FSMA roles. All right, you saw that LDAP to server one. It doesn't take long, as you see. It's going to restart right now. But if you notice something, I'm going to click on close. It's going to restart. I want to go to server one and show you that server one is holding the FSMA roles right now. Watch. See this? It was two. Watch this now. Take a look and see what's going to happen. They're back on one, guys. You see that, folks? Why? Because when I demote a replica, the replica had the FSMA was like, I need to give these FSMA roles to someone else in the domain, and only DC1 is there, so DC1 got the roles right now. If I check Active Directory users and computers, on my see child is no longer there. So it's going to crash. See that? So I should close and tools and Active Directory users and computers. So if I right click and change domain, I'm not going to see the other domain, right? The child is not there. So if I right click and choose change domain controller, I don't see the other one. It's gone. Same thing. If I go domain controls you, I don't see the second one. It's going to be under the computers container. See that? It's part of the domain. When something joins the domain, if it's a server or a client, that's where they actually automatically go. That means it's just part of the domain. I could log on to the domain, but I cannot manage Active Directory. You know, that's we're going to see that in more details. So let me minimize this and go to server 2. And there we go. We're at the logon screen. And I want to still log on to the domain. See, I could log on to the domain, or I could say other user. If I want to log in locally, I would do dot slash. See, look at the bottom here. It says local machine, right? So look, let me log in locally and show you what's the effect over here. And let me put the password. So I'm logging on local machine, even though it's part of the domain. I am not authenticating with the actual domain. So let's keep that in mind. And let me show you what's going to happen here. The Active Directory role, the domain service is still there, which includes the RSAT, right? So that's actually still there. I want to see if I could manage Active Directory, even though I'm logged in actually locally. So watch this. Let's give it a moment. Go to Tools and open Active Directory users and computers. Look what it's going to tell me. You can't, right? I can't. Why? Let me tell you why. I still have the RSAT installed. These are part of the RSAT pack, right? Look, let me cite, look, because if I open the command prompt and I say, who am I, space slash user, watch this. Font, let me just change the font over here to green. And let me say, let me just do this. Who am I, space slash user? It's the local machine. I'm logged in locally. So I'm going to log off just like this. And this time, I'm going to log on to the domain. So let's take a look. So this time I'm going to say other user. I could say administrator at, this is a classic way. And I could say Udemy and then the password. So now I'm logged into the domain because this machine is still a member server. So if I open the command prompt and I say, who am I again? And look, it says .udemy. This is perfect, right? So if I say, who am I, space slash user, look what it says. Udemy slash administrator. Okay. I go to tools. I open Active Directory. Look what's going to happen. I should be able to open it. Why? Because I'm logged into the domain. Doesn't mean I have Active Directory installed here. This is part of the RSAT, which means I could remotely manage Active Directory. Okay. But it's not a domain controller because under domain controls, I only have server 1. This machine that I'm working on is actually server 2. It's a member server. So for me to manage Active Directory remotely, like on a server, I have to be part of the domain. Then I could install the R site. We're going to see that more and more. For now, I'm going to remove the role, just like what I did on server 3, guys. So I'm going to go next, next, and we're going to come back to this in a future. Map. So you'll see. Let me remove this and remove also DNS. Put a check mark in the box and click on remove. Give it a moment. It should not take long. It's going to restart. Same thing, but it's still going to be a member server. So I'm going to leave it as it is. It's going to be a member server, which means it's part of the domain. I mean, member servers will be discussed in a moment, standalone and domain controls. Just a quick recap. So let's give this a moment. It's going to restart in a few seconds. All right. There you go. Almost there. All right. So this is like the proper way of doing things here, installing and demoting and removing the role of Active Directory domain services. So let's give it just a few more seconds and it should just restart on its own because I left the check mark to say reboot on completion. All right. So that's what should I see. Look what it's removing, the ADDS tools. ADDS tools. That's what it's actually getting removed right now. Remember, Active Directory is using LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, right? The authentication is actually Kerberos. That's the one that verifies the username and the actual password. So let's remember that. There you go. Restarting. This looks good. Let's give it a moment and see how this works out for us. Almost there. And then I have to log in for it to continue removing the role. Okay, so that's what I need to do to continue removing the role. So it's still actually a member server. It's still part of the domain. So when I demote a replica, the directory is gone, but it's still part of the domain. So it's going to the domain itself. All right. So let's remember that. The last one, which is server 1, when I demote it, it will become a standalone server. It's a workgroup. All right. So we'll see that in a moment. Let's just give it a few more seconds and see how this actually works out for us. Let's see, almost there. All right, continuing to remove the actual features and roles. And I should be getting the logon screen right now. All right. I remember I had to do the DNS configuration. I had to, because this is no longer a DNS service. So I'm still logging on to the domain itself, right? So another way to log on to the domain, you actually put the domain, Udemy, and I say slash, right, administrator. And then I put the password. It's the same thing. Either way is the same, guys. See that? It goes back to this. They're both the same. Let me just make sure the role is actually gone from here. Give it a few seconds and let's give it a moment and that should continue removing the role. So I won't be able to manage Active Directory from this box over here, right? So let's see. All right, good. It is actually in the process of removing the role itself. So this actually looks good. But remember, it's a member server because it's actually part of the domain. Udemy local, guys. So let's give this a moment and it should be done in a few more seconds. All right, look, domain udemy.local. When I click on it, I don't get that error message. Oh, it's a domain. See, it's just part of the domain. All right, see, I don't get that message where it's a domain controller. No, it's just a member server. It's part of the domain. I could close right now and it will still continue removing, by the way. It will not affect it. Just to let you know, it doesn't mean you have to keep staring at it, right? From here to see what's going on. So it's actually done. So I'm back to normal, just like this. All right, good. So I'm going to suspend this. Actually, you know what? Let me leave the server for now. Or you know what? Let's suspend it. We'll come back to it later on. This part of the lecture we finished. So we have a few more. In our next lecture, I want to go over demoting the last domain control the domain, right? Which is server one. All right, folks. So we'll see you guys soon. Okay, guys. Bye. All right, welcome back, folks. It's Mo again. So what we're going to do in this lecture, we're going to be demoting and removing Active Directory from the first server. We're going to see what's going to happen. Well, guess what? If I remove it from the last domain controlling the domain, it will be a standalone server. So let's take a look and see. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. There we go. So I'm going to go to manage. We know the drill. Remove roles and features. Next. Next, and remove the check mark from Active Directory domain services. Then remove features. Demote this domain controller. And I have to say, it's the last domain controller in the domain, right? So I'm going to go next, proceed with removal. So this one will be a standalone server. Remove DNS, remove everything that is going on over here, right? And let me put the passwords and continue on. And I'm going to choose demote. So let's see what works over here for us. This should not take long. And this server could be a standalone server, right? Because it's the last domain controller in the domain itself. So it's a work group technically, right? It's an actual work group. It's a peer-to-peer network, right? That's what it is, a peer-to-peer network. So let's give this a moment and see what it does for us. It's just preparing right now. So right now it's like I have nothing. I got rid of it from server 3. I got rid of the Active Directory from server 2, and I got rid of it from server what? From server 1. That's what I'm about to do. Right? So that's something that we're looking into right now. So in this case, it's like I have to start again from scratch. And that's what I'm going to be doing soon after this is actually done. So this is a last domain control of the domain. So then I'm going to remove the roles and do the same thing just to show you the behavior of what actually happens when you demote a replica, when you demote a child domain, when you demote like the last domain controller. What is the status of it? See, look, it's stopping all these interesting services. Remember, like I always get the sysvol, the netlogon. If it's an actual domain controller, when I demote, I'm not going to see this anymore. All right. See, and it says demotion at the top. So that's what it's actually doing. So I'm not going to see that. Service, let's say also Active Directory Domain Services, DNS, also should be gone. So this server will be a standalone server. If I check local server, it already says it's a work group, so it's actually working on it. It's just in the process of getting restarted right now. That's what it looks like. There you go. See that? So, and it's finished, right? So this will restart in a moment, and that's how I know that this server is a standalone server, which is an actual work group. No longer, I do have an actual domain, all right? And this will not take long because I'm not actually hosting Active Directory. What I want to do is I want to actually continue to remove those roles, which is Active Directory domain services and DNS. That's what I want to do over here. So let's give it a few seconds. All right, almost there. All right. So remember, we're still working with Server 2019. We'll be merging soon later in the class to 2022, like a merge and an upgrade. It's going to be very interesting. Let's see how that works for us. All right. Almost there. All right. There we go. And I should get the log on screen soon. All right. So my next step is let me just go ahead and log on. Let me put the password, right? Let's give it a few seconds and see how this works for us. All right. And I'm going to remove the role itself, but I want to show you that it's actually a work group, right? It's a work group. That's what it is. It's a standalone server at the moment. That's what I have here. And let's wait for server manager to populate and give it a moment. All right. And local server. And as you notice, it's a work group. All right, there you go. So what I want to do next is remove roles and features. See, when I see this on the left side, it doesn't mean it's a domain controller. That's what I wanted to show you too. It's just the role is actually installed. All right. And also besides this, I want to remove also what guys? DNS. Right, folks? So Active Directory Domain Services and DNS. That's what I want to remove over here. Next, next, and put a check mark in the box and click on remove. And let's see, this should not actually take long. Because after this lecture, we want to talk a little bit more about standalone servers, even though we've been talking about it like crazy, like work groups, member servers, domain controls again. So we have a recap of what's actually going on before we go to our next section. So we can start introducing different consoles, and we're going to focus more and more, little by little, like in more depth on each console. That's what we're going to be seeing. So this one's actually almost in the process of finishing. All right. So let's give it a moment and see how this actually works for us. All right. Good, good, good. So remember, if you see ADDS, it doesn't mean it's a domain controller. It's just the role is installed, but it's not actually hosting Active Directory, right? It's not hosting AD at all. That's what we need to actually understand and know. Let's give it a few more seconds and it should restart on its own. Right, because I left the check mark in the box where it's going to reboot on completion, right? It's always good to do that. So what I'm trying to say is never remove or add things during business hours, all right? You always do this like after hours, on weekends, like working as a network admin. It's not like 8 to 5. It's going to be like after 5. It's going to be before 8. It's going to be on weekends, right? So there's a lot of things that we have to actually understand and look into working as a network administrator. Let's give this a moment and see what happens here. So this is a workgroup machine at the moment. It's a stand-alone server. All right. That's what it is, a standalone server. Let's give it a few more seconds and see what happens over here. I should be fine in a few moments. And then we have to redo again, which is good. The more we do this, the more we get our hands on, the more practice we actually have, guys. Right? It's always practice, practice, and practice. That's how you get adjusted and prosper and continue in the IT field. All right, working on the features. Okay, so let me go ahead and log on. Let me put the password, and it should have the roles gone. So this is a standalone server now. All right. And the roles are gone. So if I check, first of all, local server, it's going to say work group, right? That's actually fine. And I'm not going to see the roles over here. I mean, it's going to continue removing the roles. So as I said, I could actually close. You can close this with it without interrupting. So I could close this. In the background, it will actually do so. So everything looks fine now. So we're done with this lecture. Our last lecture part of this section will be just discussing workgroup versus domain controller versus a member server, just as a recap. All right. So we'll see you folks in a moment. We'll be back soon. All right, guys. Later. All right, folks, welcome back. It's Mo again. Let's go ahead and continue. What we're going to be discussing right now the differences between like a standalone server, a member server, and a domain controller. So look at this. I already have a standalone server, which is my worker machine, and I want to start my second server, which was a member server. Remember, it was the replica. So I'm going to start my second server too, so we can see the differences between them. In what cases will I use a standalone server? In what case will I use a member server, right? That's what I want to look into. Watch this. First of all, let me go ahead to the standalone server. In what cases will we actually be hosting a server and you're not going to be putting Active Directory on it? Let me just show you one simple example. If I go to manage, add roles and features, and I go next, and I go next, and next. Let's say this server is hosting a website, which means I need to install web server IIS. For the outside world, anything that you need to deal for the outside world that is not just related to your internal organization, you leave it as a standalone server, which is a work group. In my case, I could say that this, okay, is my web server hosted on a work group machine. In other words, I'm going to be exposing this to the internet, right? It's going to be exposed to the internet. It's not for just internal. Anything that is for internal, I would say, let me go to my second server. It's a member server. So when I go to manage, add roles and features, what roles do I put on a member server? Everything except for what? DNS and Active Directory. So DNS and Active Directory, they always go together. If it's DHCP, if it's a web server hosting internally, if it's remote desktop, if it's a file server, right? If it's certificates, anything that is required for internal, if it's an update server, if it's an image server, I have to have it as a member server. Remember, the only thing that goes with Active Directory is DNS. So AD and DNS are always stuck with each other like crazy glue. They never get separated. So DNS is always with Active Directory. So DNS and Active Directory are always together. So your domain controller should only have DNS. My domain controller should not be hosting DHCP, should not be hosting remote access VPN. My domain controller should not be hosting a website. My domain controller should not be a file server, should not be a DHCP server. That increases the level of lower security, right? Because I am trying to lock down my domain control. I'm trying to secure it. So those roles should be on a member server. I cannot combine them with Active Directory. And as I said, a standalone server is something that you deal with outside world, anybody that is not actually inside the organization. Just wanted to give you like a little recap of, in what cases will you be using a member server? What roles are actually good for that? How about if it's a domain controller? That means it's only hosting Active Directory. If it's something for the outside world, that means it's a standalone server, nothing else. So that was the last thing of this lecture that is part of section 8. We're going to continue with section 9 for more and more interesting topics. So, all right, folks, we'll see you guys soon. Okay, bye.